somebody asked the question, who were the Tuskegee Airmen? And my immediate response it was, well, they were just a bunch of good old red-blooded American boys who did what they had to do in the time they had to do it, and they did it well.
Our project involves what we're calling now the Fallen 66. It has to do with those Tuskegee Airmen pilots that were killed. How many aircraft would be assigned, for instance, to your group?
Well, a group normally, a normal group consisted of 3 fighter squadrons. We were the biggest fighter squadron in the whole United States Air Force.
When you look at them, you see just how vibrant and young and courageous they were. And so just by bringing that out, it helps you realize that the cost of war is some human suffering, both for those who remain, but mainly for those and their families who were lost.
Soldiers who knew no fear, men who would defend even unto death the land of their birth.
Since World War II, to try to identify as many of the missing as possible in terms of the efforts of the country.
Some were killed in North Africa, in Italy, but most of them were killed on the missions with the 332nd.
On the Berlin mission, we lost 5 guys did not come back from that mission. One, Captain Armour McDaniels, was shot down over Berlin by an ME-262. 2 others, Leon Spears and Mitchell, James Mitchell. I think Spears had engine problems, and Mitchell escorted him behind. We were told if you had any problems to go land behind the Russian lines if you're up near Berlin, because they were right there. Spears, my understanding, the story I got, that they crash landed on an open field over which the Germans and the Russians were engaged in combat. He was captured by the Germans. He was liberated 3 days later by the Russians. Mitchell landed his plane at a Russian field, and they were joined after the Russians got Spears. Now, Reeves and Robinson were heard on the radio to Rimini Tower in northern Italy to say, there's a field, let's go have a look. That's the last contact that was had with them, and to my knowledge, no trace was ever found of either plane or either man.
Although I did communicate with some of the widows who wanted to know the circumstances, because I was on some of the missions where some of the people were killed. They wanted to know the circumstances, and I told them what I knew. I saw the plane go down, saw it crash, but I didn't know exactly where, because they were trying to locate the remains and where they might have been buried.
Nancy Lieutenant Colon.
Right.
Is that it?
That's it, yes.
Your brother Samuel,
Yes.
Tuskegee Airman, combat training. He had left Tuskegee, left combat training, I assume, and was assigned overseas.
Right. To Italy.
Okay. And how long did he fight over there? Do you have any idea?
I would say he went over that fall. That would be the fall of 44.
Mm-hmm.
And his incident occurred April 12, 45.
So you were in the military then as a nurse?
Oh, yes. We're assigned to Fort Devens in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Right.
36, we were the first black nurses that were sent to Fort Huachuca, where the nurses that were there that were black were assigned to take care of the black soldiers and the POWs.
Did you you were getting news back where you were about the war and about, did you get news about fallen soldiers, fallen airmen then?
No, well, I'm wishing that, I wish I had known him. Wish I had known him. Because they were very special men.
Samuel Gordon, lieutenant, was second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Corps, killed in action in 1945. He was a 20-year-old committed to serving his nation, committed to protecting his family, and was willing to sacrifice it all. And he did indeed sacrifice it all. He was a Tuskegee Airman. He was killed on his third mission, accompanying bombers into Germany from their base in Ramitelli, Italy, and was lost in action. And Tuskegee Airmen were very consequential because when they started accompanying bombing runs, and it's so important to recognize the Red Tails, as they're referred to, the Tuskegee Airmen. They led the way in aviation in general and for African Americans in service to our nation.
On the day that Captain Lawrence Dixon crashed, he and his wingman had been assigned to escort a P-38 photo reconnaissance plane that flew over Prague, Czechoslovakia. They were returning from Prague when Captain Dixon developed engine trouble.
The project that we're doing here is the result of a collaboration between the University of New Orleans, the University of Innsbruck, the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, and the DPAA. We're currently investigating the site that we believe to be the location of Captain Lawrence Dixon. The crash site was lost, his remains were never recovered after the war, but as the result of some research by the DPAA, this really appears to be that location. So we're now doing excavations in the hope that we can recover something that we can definitively link to Captain Dixon and thus kind of close the case on what happened to him at the end of the war. We're currently excavating the crash site itself. After surveying the area, we think that's the most likely location that any human remains would be located. So we're taking a cross-section, a bisection of the crash site to look at essentially what happened to it over time. And we're hoping to recover something from within that we can definitively link to this one particular crash.
Eyewitness News exclusive. Investigators have identified the remains of a Tuskegee Airman from Harlem killed in action more than 74 years ago. Eyewitness News reporter Lucy Yang met today with the daughter of Captain Lawrence Dixon and shares her emotional story.
74 and a half.
Marla Andrews waited a lifetime, 74 and a half long years to be exact, to bury the father she always loved but never knew.
I wanted him to be proud of me and the legacy we have together.
Marla's middle name is Lawrence Dixon. Her father's name, Captain Lawrence Dixon, was a pilot with the Tuskegee Airmen, the brave soldiers who were willing to sacrifice all for their country but couldn't fly with the rest of the pilots because they were black. On Friday, DNA confirmed they had found Captain Dixon's remains and part of his plane exactly where it crashed in World War II.
Well, we're doing here memorializing Walter Manning. And it was nearly this date, 73 years ago, that we were on a fighter sweep in this area of the country here, and that's when Walter got shot down, and later on, about 3 days later, met his demise at the being captured by a mob and executed at the time. Name is Harry Stewart, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. I met Lieutenant Manning sometime before that, maybe a year and a half before that. We both went in the service together, and we went to the same field where we trained at. I joined up with him in the same squadron when I went overseas and joined him in the 301st Fighter Squadron in Ramitelli, Italy at the time. Manning was quite a guy, you know, and he wanted to fly very, very badly. He wanted to get his pilot's wings and do his duty for his country, and I guess he did all he wanted to do as far as the flying was concerned. That was what he was chiefly after. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. Well, it certainly means a great deal to me, being, you know, one of the 6 pilots who flew along with him when he met his demise. But the other thing is that the people of the United States know nothing about what actually happened to Walter Manning. And I'm hoping with all of this that we can take the story back to the United States and let the people know what had happened to him.
Company!
The biggest thing was the extent that the government had gone to memorialize the memory of Walter Manning, but also the display, the pageantry that they put on at the time there was just beyond any expectations that I had. And now the memorial that we see that stands over to the side of us is quite a tribute to the memory of Manning. Today we turn out to be allies, and quite comfortable allies. I think that he would be very forgiving and of the demise that he had, and I think that he would be very pleased with the memorial that had been named in his honor.
Tell me, weary soldier, from the rude and stirring wars, was my brother in the battle where you gained those noble scars? He was ever brave and valiant, and I know he never fled. Was his name among the wounded or numbered with the dead? Was my brother in the battle when the tide of war ran high? You would know him in a moment by his dark and flashing eyes. Tell me, weary soldier, will he never come again? Did he suffer with the wounded or die among the slain? Was my brother in the battle when the noble Highland hosts were so wrongfully outnumbered on the Carolina coast? Did he struggle for the Union mid the thunder and the rain till he fell among the brave on the bleak Virginia plain. I'm sure that he was dauntless and his courage ne'er would lag by contending for the honor of our dear and cherished flag. Tell me, weary soldier, will he ne'er come again? Did he suffer with the wounded or die among the slain? Was my brother in the battle when the flag of Erin came to the rescue of our banner and protection of our fame? While the fleet from off the waters poured out terror and dismay, till the bold and erring foe fell like leaves on autumn day. When the bugle called to battle and the cannon deeply roared, oh, I wish I could have seen him draw his sharp and glittering sword. Tell me, weary soldier, will he never come again? Did he suffer, meet the wounded, or die among